Welcome back, everyone. Like I said, we are not going to be working on to the Evo in this video. We are going to be doing a clutch job on this 2010 WRX. So it started making some pretty bad throw up burn noise a while back. I let him know he probably should order a clutch just to be on the safe side, because obviously we go in there to replace a throw up bearing, not knowing what kind of life is on the clutch. It doesn't make sense. So we went ahead and got our brand new ACT clutch that I always run, guys. I'll put that down into the description, so that way if you do need to get a clutch, you guys will know exactly which one to get. But I think I'm gonna take this video and make it more of a how-to, just kind of like how I used to do. So we are gonna get started right away on this thing today, and you guys are gonna learn a lot. So first thing, obviously, we're gonna get this thing up in the air, and then I'm gonna go over the basics on the top of the engine of what we need to take apart or unhook so that we can get this transmission out of the car, and then from there we'll move to the bottom of the car. Now that we got our car all the way up on our jack stands, and this is one of the higher settings on these, so we have plenty of room underneath the car. Obviously we're going to be restricted no matter what on this thing underneath working on the car, but this will be the best way we can. We have our hood open here. First thing first, go ahead and disconnect your negative on your battery terminal. This is big, guys, because don't think I'm just telling you to do this because, you know, obviously everyone and their brother says whenever we're working on a car, unhook your battery. That's not the reason. The reason why we're unhooking our battery and why I make it such a point is because we do have to pull our starter out. That does have a power wire directly leading to your battery, and if you take that bolt off and let it arc out on something, could catch fire, could damage your wire harness, fuses. So that's why, number one, unhook your negative battery terminal, guys. It's very important. So we'll do that. This car does have an aftermarket intercooler and downpipe on it, so it may look a little bit different than what you're working with, but I promise it's the same process. So first thing we're going to be doing, obviously, is getting this intercooler off of the car. That includes one hose clamp right down here, and we have our bracket. Now when you're doing these intercoolers, guys, I really do suggest taking the brackets all the way off, because it will make your life so much easier, because you get a lot more wiggle room that you're going to need to get that intercooler out of there. So you have two bolts right up here on the manifold, and then you're going to have one bolt that mounts to your intercooler. Take out those three bolts. Those are a 12mm socket. From there, we are going to disconnect the hose on our blow-off valve. This is an aftermarket blow-off valve, but like I said, same process, guys. This has a hose clamp. Yours is going to have an actual clamp that you grab with some pliers, so not too big of a deal. We're going to take that hose off, pull our vacuum line off that goes onto the blow-off valve right here. That will come off of the intercooler. That way we don't have to unbolt it from the intercooler. Coming over to the passenger side, this is our turbocharger on our WRX model. Obviously this intercooler looks a bit different than your STI. Similar process, different bolting pattern on the WRX because it obviously bolts directly to the housing of the turbo. Same thing here, we got two 12mm bolts going into this guy, so we'll take those out. Our intercooler will be free to come out at that point, and we can move along to what's underneath of that. So let me get that thing pulled off real quick, then we'll jump to what's underneath of it, so that way I'm not just blindly showing you guys. For those of you, like I said, this is going to be a DIY, so that way I can thoroughly show you how to do a clutch job on your WRX. STI is going to be very similar, guys. Pretty sure anyone that's doing this job, if you can do the job, you can figure out the differences, but intercooler is probably a little bit easier, I would guess, on the STI. They're both about the same difficulty level, but other than that, the only difference from this to an STI would be the clutch pin that goes across into the transmission. So obviously I won't be able to show that on this car, but like I said, if you're doing a job, I'm sure you can figure it out, and there's plenty of other videos that show you that clutch pin along with mine. So let's get this intercooler out of our way so we can further take a look in here of what we got to take apart to get this transmission out of here. got our intercooler out of our way now, so now we can actually show what I mean when we get further into here. Like I said, this is a 2010 WRX. Everything's going to be pretty much the same on 06 to 2014 for this body style. The newer WRXs, like the 2015 plus FA WRXs, aren't too much different. They do just have clutch cables instead of having a mechanical linkage like this car does. So moving along back here, we are going to need to take out our pitch stop mount bolt. This is a 14mm nut and bolt that goes through the other side. What we have here is our slave cylinder. This has two 14mm bolts holding this guy down, so we're going to take those out. From there, we do move on to our wire harness of this transmission, which is really straightforward. We have a ground that's going to be mounted up on the pitch stop right there, a 10mm bolt, and from there we need to unplug our actual harness down here. So we have a rear O2 that goes down underneath the car, and then we have obviously our vehicle position and reverse lights, which I'm unclipping right now, so that way we have that up out of our way. And once we get those up and out of our way, I'm trying to unplug them one-handed here for you. See if I can get to this one. Oh, maybe it wants to. All right, so now we got those unplugged. I like to take these guys and tuck them up around this AC line to make sure that we aren't going to pinch them or damage them in any way when we're trying to pull this transmission out. That's all there is for wiring. It's literally the ground and those two plugs right there. So it's really easy. You're going to want to pull out your transmission dipstick here and sit that to the side. Inspect your fluid, which this fluid definitely looks like it's seeing better days, so I'm going to let them know we probably should do a fluid change onto this car. So I will show you guys what fluid we end up using on that. Like I said, we're going to sit this thing aside with the intercooler there, and moving back over to the car, we will need to take this aftermarket heat shield off. Usually it's pretty similar to a stock heat shield, but there's a lot less bolts. We're gonna have obviously one 10mm bolt there, and then we're gonna have one that's way down in there, which I don't know if I'm gonna be able to show. I might be able to. So we take a look. It's way down there. You can see right with my finger. That's where it is. That'll get our shield off. So before I keep giving you guys a bunch of information, I'm gonna go ahead, get those steps knocked out, and from there I can show you furthermore on how to get the downpipe out of here, and then we move on to our starter over there. So let me get those taken care of, and then we'll jump ahead. We got all that taken care of. Since this car did have an aftermarket pitch stop mount that ran across from here to the firewall, I did go ahead and remove it completely. Usually with a factory one, you can just loosen the 14mm bolt back here, pull it up, and then tighten it, and it'll be nice and out of your way. But since this had an aftermarket one, I just went ahead and pulled it all the way out of our way, so we have all the room we're going to need. Next thing that we need to move to is we need to move to our downpipe bolts there and our starter over here. So as you can take a look there, this is our starter on our WRX here. What we're going to have is we're going to have a grounding cable here, and that's going to go up to the top mount of that starter to the engine block through the transmission. Yes, that is a transmission bolt. Then from there we have what is our power wire that I was talking about. So this is direct lead to the battery. It has a little dust shield on it, so I'll go ahead and remove that shield, which will reveal our nut underneath there. That is a 12mm, so we're gonna get that nut off. I like to just unscrew it, pull the cable off of it, put the nut back on, undo our 14 here, and then we're gonna undo our 14 over there. It is definitely a lot easier to get to that bottom bolt underneath the car. and then we can pull our starter all the way out of here. So moving over to our downpipe, we're going to have usually 5 bolts on these things. Unless you're me, then I put 4 bolts in them, because the bottom bolt of this downpipe with an aftermarket downpipe is a royal pain in the ass. You can tell just how rusty and obviously how much heat these things get over time. So we take out these 2 upper bolts here. There's going to be another one on the side there, and again another one there, one on the bottom as well. So those are 14 millimeters. I'm going to get those all taken care of, get that starter taken out of there, and from there we're completely finished on the top side of the engine. We can move to the bottom side of this car to where we can start getting that transmission out of this car. We did get our downpipe off. I feel like I don't really need to walk you through that because most everyone knows how to get their downpipe off their car. So now that we got that off, we can take on the next step that we need to do. I'm gonna go ahead and get underneath the car so I can show you guys what I'm talking about. So one thing we need to do for our axles and get those removed out of the car is we need to pull out this 14 millimeter bolt here. And once we do that, we can pry our ball joint out of there. Now, some cars, this is going to be tough because of obviously road conditions, rust, and wear and tear. So I like to spray some penetrating lube down in there. Hopefully those things will come out. If not, then we'll have to move to the next step, which is taking off this bottom castle nut and separating the control arm. So not too big of a deal. If we have to move to that, we will. Same thing onto the driver's side that we would have to do, get that popped down. From there, we can put these tires out and pull these axles out of the transmission. Now, I did get the okay to drain this transmission and put new fluid in, which if you take a look, and it's really tough under, this is going to be our drain right here. This is the Torx bit. I have to take a look at what size it is. I think T60 or T80. So I'll take a look and see what size it is. We'll get that drained so that way we're not leaking fluid everywhere. Then we have our transmission brace. This is held on with 6 bolts. And from there, we need to do a 17 millimeter bolt there over on that side, and then we have the 4 14 millimeters on the back side with 2 14 millimeters nuts going onto the transmission mount right there. I like to loosen these guys first, but not take the nuts off all the way, and then take all the other bolts off. That'll come down. We'll be able to gain access to our shift linkage. So I'm going to get caught up, and then I'll show you guys all about the shift linkage and how to get that off. Jumping ahead, as I mentioned, we went ahead and got the axles all the way out of the transmission. I like to use a bar to hold this out assembly, have the axle still in there and tucked to the back. Usually I don't have to pull the wheel off, but this car, those ball joints were pretty hard to get out. So went ahead and pulled the wheel off, came right out. From there, we got our drive shaft. I have everything moved to the side here. Drive shaft is going to have 2 bolts here in the center, and then you're going to have 4 bolts in the back on the rear diff you got to take off. That assembly is here. Transmission brace is off. Everything's ready to go. I have a cherry picker up here. I think this is the easiest way. I hook up to our AC mount where it's like a factory pole mount. Put a chain there to get the engine to tilt back, so that way it makes it a lot easier for when we're trying to put the transmission back in the car. And this way, with it, having it held there, even no matter what, even if you have a brand new car, the engine mounts are rubber, so they're going to have some movement. This will make sure we don't have that movement, so that way we can put the transmission on. Now moving over to the side here, you can see obviously I have my creeper down here, but we have our transmission held up by the jack underneath. This is going to be our best friend. I am doing this by myself today. Just make sure if you're doing it by yourself that you have your jack set up properly, because you can get severely hurt if this transmission falls on you. Take note, I've done it. So we have it secured. Now from here, all the bolts are out. We just need to separate the 2, drop our transmission. I'm not going to be able to show you that very well because it's just me. So I'm going to get this thing pulled out, and then we'll get this thing thrown back together. our setup here worked perfectly. Besides the engine, the transmission dowels, those are pretty seized on here. But we got our transmission down and back, as you can see on our jack here. And let me crawl under here because I want to show you what is going on with this throw bearing. Look at how mangled that thing is, guys. Yeah, that would be the throw bearing. No wonder why it was making so much noise. So another plus to us getting a new clutch. Take a look at this clutch, guys. It's literally coming apart. So definitely a good thing we got that new clutch to go on this thing, because if this thing will focus on it, yeah, that's literally pieces of the clutch. So let me put some gloves back on. I'm gonna pull that clutch to the side and show you guys. Now we got some gloves on. Let me grab this clutch. Take a look at this thing, guys. This thing is pretty smoked. So good thing we went ahead, got that new clutch kit. Let me pull that out, show you guys what clutch we ended up going with on this car, and give you guys another good tip. There you have it, guys. We got another ACT. There is the part number for any of you that might need one. This is going to be our street performance. So we still have a full nice disc. Going to be nice to our 5-speed transmission. And this is my tip for you guys. If you're doing a clutch job on a WRX, go ahead and grab this fork. This is a new clutch fork. They are known to breaking right at the pivot ball right there. So it's like a $30 add-on, guys. You're better off just going ahead replacing it at the same time. And with what was going on here, it sounded like a throw bearing, but not knowing sure, I made sure that he went ahead, got one of those new forks. Also, you guys know my pet peeve about they've been being lubricated here and up top. This car obviously was not very lubricated anymore. It looked like, let me rephrase, it felt like the car had an aftermarket clutch in it, but this obviously looks like a stock clutch. So how many miles are on it? We don't know. It could have been replaced, could have not. I think this car has 120,000 miles on it. So that would explain the wear and abuse on this clutch, because it could just be its time. Now, we got our new ACT. We are gonna go ahead and get this thing all thrown together, all mounted up, and get our transmission back in the car. Get this thing thrown all back together, so that way it's not apart. I'm just gonna jump through, get up this thing back together, because we are gonna be running out of daylight. It is not the most pretty day outside. It's about 30 degrees, definitely cold, kind of muggy, really humid. So just gonna go ahead, get the thing back together, and then I'll go ahead and talk about everything when I'm done, guys. As you can see, we're all finished up. Ben's car is back to him over there, and it looks like, well, we got some lovely snow. So good thing we got that thing finished up, so that way we didn't have to work in the snow. Looks like we're gonna be getting quite a bit of snow for the next about week and a half. And as we have jumped ahead, this is obviously another day, you can tell, because one snow, one a tire. But I've been working on the Evo in the background, guys, and I haven't had a chance to actually record. But Dimitri, big shout out to him, got this thing all aligned, and we got our new tire pressure sensors in there, got those all programmed. All the lights on the dash are almost off of this thing. There is no more check engine light, there's no more ACD or AYC codes, all drive codes. And there goes our neighbor. A little bit noisier when it's snowy out. We have no more all drive codes. We have no more check engine light on the car, which was for that mass airflow sensor. And we have no more tire pressure sensor light. We do still have our airbag code. I put a resistor underneath the driver's side and the passenger side seat. And when I had Dimitri try to clear the code, it was coming back something different. So I might have to look a little bit further into that, or pick up the tools where I can actually turn off the whole airbag system on this thing, because that code is definitely going to get annoying. But this thing is now able to be daily driven for the wife until I get that code figured out, which is not the end of the world, because obviously this thing is not going to have working airbags anyway. So until then, she can drive this thing. It is now the winter car. I do need to get those Dane fender liners for it, because you can see what it's doing to the headlights. It's just shooting stuff in through the back and getting condensation in there. So definitely need to get the fender liners. Thankfully these headlights were really cheap. They're about $100. I didn't want to buy nice ones yet, knowing that this thing's going to be the winter car and we don't have fender liners. So until I can find those little pieces up front, that's just going to be the way it is. I know I was going to make a separate video on it, but honestly just trying to get everything caught up, everything to the point where I wasn't working out in the snow, because obviously we have snow now. We might have snow for quite a while. That's kind of the time of year it is here. So generally we start getting snow around December and it stays into February. So I have been looking at some shops. Now is going to be kind of a slower portion, obviously with Christmas, New Year's and things like that. So obviously it's a little hesitant to go get a shop at this point, but I have been looking. It's going to be very difficult to work into this stuff out here, especially when the race car comes home. We have the garage taken all the way up from Hyperblue and the race car right now being Omar's cars in there. So got to think about something. This gives you guys a good update. I know it's been a couple days. I meant to have this video up honestly and probably the next day after you guys saw the last one, but it's just been busy. Like I said, been trying to get caught up to where I'm not working out in the day and snow. So do have some other stuff coming up for you guys. Till then, I'll see you guys into the next video.
Living life up in the fast lane. Hey. Living life up in the fast lane. And I ain't slowing down, I ain't slowing down, I ain't slowing down. Living life up in the fast lane. Pedal to I wouldn't say we made it, but we made it through. We just had moose to make and we made them do it. I wouldn't say we made it, but we made it through. We just had moose to make and we made them do it. I wouldn't say we made it. We didn't make it up, we just made a way. We gon' take it up, we won't fade away. I got too many dreams, gotta stay awake. Ask me if I changed, yo, it's night and day. I told the backstabbers, put the knife away. trying to get my family to a nicer place. Room for everybody, but no room for hate. Everybody eating off the nicest plates. But we made it through. We just had moose to make, and we made them do that. Would've said we made it, but we made it through. We just had moose to make, and we made them do that. Would've said we made it, but we made it through. We just had moose to make, and we made them do that. Would've said we made it, but we made it through. We just had moose to make, and we made them do that. Would've said we made it. Play this when it all comes together. Yeah. When it can't get any better, yeah. Play this when it all comes together, yeah. When it can't get any better, but you better keep on grinding, keep on rising, keep on shining. They forget, then you remind them what we call a perfect timing. But you better keep on grinding, keep on rising, keep on shining. They forget, then you remind them what we call a perfect timing. I'm like, hey, but we made it through. We just had moose to make, and we made them do that. Would've said we made it, but we made it through. We just had moose to make, and we made them do that. Would've said we made it, but we made it through. We just had moose to make, and we made them do that. Would've said we made it, but we made it through. We just had moose to make, and we made them do that. Would've said we made it. I know I gotta keep going. Who's up at 5 in the morning? Come on. I know I gotta keep going. Who's up at 5 in the morning? Come on. I wouldn't say we made it, but we made it through.